Hey there everybody, it's Chris. It's been a long hot summer. I'm out here in thereabouts
Diablo Canyon, Nuevo Mexico.
but the reason that we're here today, I don't have a place to set up my turntable yet, but we need to talk about David Byron. We need to look at his solo albums. It's been quite a good summer for music. I want to get into basically all the albums that David Byron made outside of Uriah Heep after Uriah Heep. And I'm going to talk about some vinyl records and CDs that I have, and even what's available on some of the streaming services, because there's some really good stuff there. And before I do that, I'm going to show you some other records. This summer I've had the chance to see the mighty Uriah Heep and Judas Priest 3 times in successive nights, and it was just a dream come true, that having been my first concert in 1982. And I highly recommend, if you ever get a chance to see a band you love, either 2 sets in a row or 2 nights, even 3 nights in a row, is just a really great experience. You kind of get to you still get the excitement of the live performance, but it takes some of the edge off knowing that you're going to see them over successive nights. And David Byron's music was played that night, and he's still a big part of the band, even though he died in 1985. It's his vocals that are on some of the songs that we know. It's his image that is on the cover of the first Uriah Heep album, which is just a very iconic image as well. So we're going to look at some awesome records. I've been amazed at how much I like these records, and there's really some cool connections to great players in rock history as well, and some great sounds. And so we're going to look at them chronologically. Before I do, we're just kind of get in the mood a little bit and look at some other ones that I would call deep on Heep, some other records here that are Uriah Heep related, that are also worth exploring. These I'm just going to show to just kind of warm up me talking about David Byron here. This is actually a laser disc from, I think, 1991, so it's still got Trevor Bolder and Lee Kerslake in the band. And I'm not going to open it up, but this is a laser disc. Very cool. And then this is, in my collection, it's there. The band is Trapeze, Medusa. This has Dave Holland in the band, who was the drummer in Judas Priest when I saw them in 1982. And later, Peter Golby would also sing in this band. Not nearly as good a record as this, but so it's related to the first night that I saw Uriah Heep and Judas Priest with Dave Holland. But this is a great record with, I said I wasn't going to talk about it, but this is just an awesome record. And then I did pick up, right before I left California here, I did grab a beautiful vinyl copy of Ken Hensley's Proud Words on a Dusty Shelf. Just a great pick up there. Also with Ken Hensley's name attached to it is the Weed record. Very good. And then the last one I'll show you is also excellent. This is the Keith Hartley band, who played at Woodstock, and this has Gary Thane on bass. But this is a trooper of a record. Okay, so let's talk about the David Byron solo records and how that came to be. David Byron was in a band called Spice right before Uriah Heep, and he had lots of associations with different musicians, and they pick up later in his discography. So technically, David Byron was the singer in Uriah Heep from 1970 until 1976. So while he was still a full-fledged member of the band, he did put out a solo record called Take No Prisoners from 1976. This starts off with a Man Full of Yesterdays. Has a great track on here called Silver White Man, which could definitely sounds like it could be a Uriah Heep track. It has some guest appearances from John Wetton. Mick Box plays on it. Lee Kerslake plays on it. So everything is still good with the band, but this is technically his last year with the band. But very soulful. You know, it doesn't have the Heep organ sound that is so distinctive, and every song doesn't go into a boogie, but it's still got a great classic rock feel. The playing is great. And it's been a while since I've spun this one, but I have heard selected tracks of it, but it is they only get better from here. So in 1976, still with the band, puts out Take No Prisoners. We will get to a couple sound drops here. Yeah, Silver White Man is definitely a great track. So within just that, the very next year, he does actually split from Uriah Heep and forms another band called Rough Diamond. And so Rough Diamond has a guitar player, Clem Clemson, and he was in Humble Pie, and also Jeff Britton from Wings. And this is a great record with some super memorable tracks. Hobo is fantastic. By the Horn is great. Lock and Key is great. These are some real driving hard rock tracks that have some progressive chops, and David's singing is phenomenal. The first song on it, he has two songs called Rock and Roll, so let me make sure I'm talking about the right one. Yeah, actually this one is pretty hard rocking, but it is kind of an old-fashioned song, and that plays into some of his really best material is kind of inspired by 50s rock. And here I think it maybe worked against the band commercially, even though there's some other places we're going to talk about later where I just love that influence in his music. But this should be more widely known, I guess. I mean, it's a great rock and roll record. It's just got professional musicians, great singing from David Byron. This is the Clem Clemson, David Byron, and the guy from Wings. So as I said, in my opinion, these records kind of got better as they went along. And so let me show you the one that I think is the most surprising. To me it was, in that it's so polished, it sounds so good, it's such a great record. And that is this record, David Byron, Babyface Killer, with this real distinctive cover. Some people even try and emulate this kind of look sometimes, never as successful as David Byron, of course. But wow, this record just has a great sound. It's sort of like ELO, Supertramp, but very aggressive at the same time that it's a pop record, but it's definitely not a Uriah Heep record at all. There's a track on here called African Breeze.
African breeze, African breeze, African breeze,
which is just about as far away from Uriah Heep as you could possibly get. But there are just some amazing moments with his vocals in here. Thinking that this record is from 1978, wow, does it sound fantastic. And I think this must be one of the records that King Diamond would worship, because David Byron has a beautiful surrealistic style to his taste, and it comes out not all the time, but sometimes in his vocal arrangements. And you can hear some real sort of sinister vocal things on this record. But back to that idea of just some good rock and roll. The second track on here, Rich Man's Lady, I just love that. It kind of reminds me of almost like Queen, Crazy Thing Called Love. It's a throwback song, but it's done fantastically with a great vocalist, obviously, like David.
'Cause she's a rich man's lady, and I ain't gonna dine.
And then track number 9 is called Acetylene Gene, which is kind of has a David Bowie glam feel to it, but just absolutely killer. And then you have a track like number 5, Everybody's a Star, where he just does a beautiful vocal, takes a really average kind of lyric, but really makes you feel it.
You can say the things that it's hard to say right now. Yes, it'll be alright. Just look at that star that's shining bright. 'Cause tonight I'm gonna be everybody's star, but my heart will be right there with you where you are.
So that is Babyface Killer. Very tough to track down on vinyl and expensive. This is pretty easily found and is excellent. So the last CD that I'm going to show you, and then I'll talk about 2 records that are on streaming, one of which is a greatest hits collection of David Byron, which includes Heep, and the other one focuses on his collaboration with this guy, Robin George, who is the guitar player in what was the David Byron Band, and their one album called On the Rocks from 1981. And this record has just grown on me so much. I just love this record and the tracks. The production on it is really awful. It is produced by David Byron. It's produced by Robin George, and he is kind of he must have been, I mean, he may not have even been 18 when he was made this record as the guitar player and the producer of this. If you go back in your mind to 1981, there were, flashy guitar players who would adopt a little bit of technology to their sound, and he was definitely in that. You can hear that he's got a great schooling in rock, but he's coming at it with some originality and flair. If the production were better on this album could be really great, because the tracks like Bad Girl are fantastic.
I want a bad girl to share my night. Don't need a tease, I'm gonna please her everywhere. Just lead the way, 'cause
There's another track, Piece of My Love, which is great as well. And there's, on this CD, they include the last single called Every Inch of the Way, where he talks about his struggle to be sober and his struggle to still be in the music business, and it's very moving. So some of the worst, unbelievably bad artwork on this, but it's pretty. I really just fell in love with the song. So there is available, you can get this as a CD, but it's also streaming, I think, on Amazon, this record here. And that is some rehearsals and live performances and demos with Robin George and them. And some of them are pretty scuffy, but there is, wow, some of the live cuts, to hear him playing this album in what sounds like a pretty small club, and just the few interactions is great to hear. Also on this record is a guy named Mel Collins from King Crimson, and he does play on those live tracks that are on the Lost and Found David Byron album. And that is really cool to hear. In fact, they do Sweet Lorraine, the Uriah Heep track, which has a great introduction from David, and they also has the saxophone as part of it, and it's great to hear him do. He also does July Morning, and he does this with no other vocalists, so he doesn't have Uriah Heep doing their whole thing behind him vocally, and so he has to do it all himself, and he handles it great. It's very, very cool to hear. So the last thing I'll talk about is the record, this one called Man Full of Yesterdays, which has a good sampling of the vinyl and the CDs that I showed you, and even would take you through great Uriah Heep tracks as well. And it starts off with a few tracks that were before Uriah Heep, including a great one called Wichi Chai Cho or something like that. Has this beautiful sort of Native American melody to it, and awesome stuff. So hopefully you enjoyed that. Hope everyone has a great end to their summer, and thanks for hanging out. I will see you next time, where we will probably talk about a band that is equally has even a longer history with me than Uriah Heep, that I'm going to get a chance to see live here in a couple weeks. So until then, everybody be well. Bye.